Hare Krishna. Welcome, Chintamani Mataji.
Hare
Lovely
Krishna.
to have you on the program.
Thank you, Damadara.
This is the first time that we're doing a virtual Istagosthi live stream, and I can't think of a more delightful guest and a more important topic: improving our Sadhu Sanga. I've known Chintamani since mid-80s, joined in the early 80s. And one half of the dynamic duo with Krishna Dharma ran the Manchester Temple together, and now assisting Krishna Dharma in Brilliant as the Sun series, Mahabharat Ramayana, and the other books. We were talking the other day in preparation that Sadhu Sanga is one of the things that's extolled so much in the scriptures. And I'm wondering what exactly improving Sadhu Sanga? Do we have to find a different caliber of sadhu? Do we have to just relate differently? What's your angle on this topic?
Thank you so much, Damadara Prabhu, first of all, for allowing me to share this topic, which is, as you know, very dear to my heart. So your question was, are we trying to improve the caliber of sadhu we associate with? Am I suggesting that we improve how we, the sadhus, associate with each other? I hope I've got your question right.
That's right.
Okay, thank you. So, well, what I'd like to say is both. Now, I just want to read something from Shastra, if I may. This is from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 5, Text 34. It's in Prabhupada's purport. Prabhupada there says about the caliber of devotee who counts as a sadhu that we should be associating with. So he says, the summary is that one has to first of all seek the association of pure devotees who not only are learned in the Vedanta, but are self-realized souls and unalloyed devotees of Lord Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. So he gives the three kind of characteristics: learned in Vedanta, self-realized souls, so at least they have to be at the Brahma Bhuta platform of Nashochati, Nakamshati, Samasavesha Bhuteshu, and they have to be unalloyed devotees of Lord Shri Krishna, Anyabilashta Shunyam Jnana Karma Janavritam. No desire for liberation, no desire for material enjoyment in this world, only desiring Krishna's happiness. This is the caliber of devotee whose association, whose association we have to seek. And Srila Prabhupada told us time and time again that we get that association. He's leaving his books, his purports for us, so we can get that kind of association. You may have remembered some of the comments that Prabhupada made on this point. He said things like, do you remember once a journalist asked Prabhupada, what will happen to the movement when you die? And Prabhupada said, I will never die. I will live in my books and you will utilize. And on other occasions, Prabhupada said things like, I'm working so hard to leave you these books so that after I go, you can continue to associate with me. You can associate with me. Now you must utilize. So the first point is, yes, we have to realize, I mean, this is at least my understanding, that without taking Prabhupada's association, the quality of our sadhu sangha is not correct. It's not sufficient. We have to take Prabhupada's association. That association is primarily there in his books, and of course there in his lectures too. So he wanted us to associate with his books. And with regard to how we associate together, yes, I do feel that we need to improve that too. We have to realize that when we say devotee association, I mean, it's a term that's bandied around a lot in ISKCON. We have to associate with devotees. We mustn't associate with non-devotees. But that can, in different people's minds, mean so many different things. For some people, it just means play football with devotees or gossip with devotees. We're doing devotee association. But no, that's not devotee association. Devotee association, Prabhupada said, is when friends come together to discuss these books. And sometimes we even discuss the books. There are devotees who enjoy discussing the books. But how do we discuss the books? We can discuss these books sometimes I'm sure you're as familiar with the phenomena as I am, in a very argumentative and kind of like almost aggressive way with each other. But no, if we discuss like that, it's not going to have the desired result. Prabhupada, not Prabhupada, Shukadev Goswami says in Canto 11, Chapter 3, Text 30, I can paraphrase it for you, that one has to learn how to associate with the devotees of the Lord so that by their mutual association, their loving friendships will develop and they will achieve mutual happiness and satisfaction. And by thus encouraging one another, they will be able to give up their attachment for sense gratification. So we have to learn how to discuss Prabhupada's books in a way that we don't end up at each other's throats and just end up disliking each other and demonizing each other. Prabhupada writes in a letter to Tribhuvanath that this is in 72, Tribhuvanath was a TP in Scotland, and he said, now I want to that all my disciples will study my books more and practice seeing them from different perspectives. These are phrases Prabhupada uses a lot, seeing from different perspectives, seeing from different angles of vision. And he said, now I want you to practice seeing things from different perspectives. So, you may see a statement or a passage in Prabhupada's books from one perspective, I may from another perspective. We have to learn to discuss according to the principles of Vada, where we're not just trying to prove each other wrong and prove myself right. So that was a long answer to your question. And the short is, yes, both. We have to learn to associate with Prabhupada and realize that without his association, frankly, I don't think we're going to make it. We'll just become show bottle devotees. That's my personal view. And we have to learn how to associate with each other in a way that actually helps us to get the fruit of good association, which is build our mutual loving friendships, mutual happiness and satisfaction, and encouraging each other so that we're actually able to give up our addictions to material sense gratification.
Thanks, Chintamani. Clearly, Srila Prabhupada labored painstakingly to provide us with the books. There's a lot of controversy now, I guess, to what extent these are Prabhupada's words versus the editor's words and so on. Do you have a view in terms of how we can be confident when we're reading the books that we are getting Srila Prabhupada's association?
Okay, so let me just reflect back your question, Prabhu. So you're saying some people are discouraged from reading the books because they think, well, these aren't Prabhupada's books anymore. There's been changes made to them, so there's no value in associating with them because it's not Prabhupada's writing anymore. So do I have a view about that? Did I understand your question correctly?
Yeah, maybe it's not as extreme as no value, although I guess I do hear sometimes people going that extreme. Just that, there are quotes in the scriptures about the the saffron particles, when you're hearing directly from the Sadhu, in the room with the Sadhu. And with Srila Prabhupada's books, we know they were transcribed. So they've come to us not as direct sound vibration, but mediated through editors and transcribers and so on. How can we be confident we're really getting the things that Prabhupada wished to share?
Okay, so you're elaborating on the question. You're saying just the very act of it having been transcribed, edited, there may be some value, but the full value of the saffron-like particles that comes from the voice of the pure devotee, we're not getting the voice directly. We're getting the edited, transcribed versions of what Prabhupada said. And it may be incorrect and incomplete, with mistakes, with flaws. So it may have diminished the value for us by studying his books. Did I understand you correctly?
Yeah, that was the essence of it. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Prabhu, when people bring this up for me, I generally say, discuss any edition you like, but just go to the books. I tend myself, we bought our Bhagavatams many years ago. So when we're discussing with my husband in terms of the Bhagavatam, I have the very old version, but my husband always uses his iPad, so he gets the latest version. And we do sometimes see discrepancies. We can access the old version, he accesses the new version, but the overall meaning, the overall effect is still there, And in terms of Prabhupada's Gita, I again have both. I have both in as hard copies in the house. I'd like, I don't know about everything in the Bhagavatam. There are some things where there's anomalies between, slight changes between what I'm reading in my hard copy Bhagavatam and what my husband's reading on his iPad. And I've never felt it's been like a sinister change in meaning, but it's sometimes, in my view, in my humble view, been an unnecessary change, but it hasn't changed for me the fundamental meaning. But in terms of the Gita, I'm really glad I got the new version, because I recently wrote an article that Dandavas kindly accepted called The Hidden Jewel in Srila Prabhupada's Purport. And Prabhupada's two opening statements to his Bhaktivedanta purports to the Gita are like incredible. They hold such an incredible advice for us. If we actually followed the advice in those two sentences. The second sentence, Prabhupada says, one should scrutinize Gita with the help of a devotee of Krishna and try to understand it without personally motivated interpretations. And if we actually use that advice to unpack those first two sentences, we discover an incredible secret about what it means to surrender and how simple it is. And I would never have discovered that if I hadn't the edited version of the Gita, because in the original Macmillan version of the Gita, the transcribers didn't understand everything that Prabhupada had spoken into the lecture that became the introduction. Prabhupada was lecturing and he taped it. And that tape is still available. I heard it because I was wondering, saying, who's done the change? Where is the change? In the Macmillan version or the new edited version? So I went to the lecture, and it's the very first lecture on prabhupadvani.org. And it's in the original, authentic words of Prabhupada are there in the edited version. They've put in everything that was missed out in the Macmillan version. They put in all the Gita Mahatmya verses that Macmillan version had couldn't make sense of them. They just missed them out. So I do think that there is value in some of the edits. It's not something that I know some devotees are really passionate about this. My passion is just improving our Sadhu Sangha. Go with any addition you want, but go to Prabhupada. And if you really just want to get the dust particles from his voice, then listen to his lectures. I forget the name of the devotee, but he's a very famous devotee in ISKCON. He's made this free, all the Prabhupada's, there's many sites like this. The one I normally use is prabhupadvani.org. All the Prabhupada's lectures are available, are free. So if you want to hear the sound, go to that. But Prabhupada did advise us to go to his books. He wanted us to. So just honoring that desire, I'm going. And I believe that Krishna will see that we're trying our best, and he will make up the difference. He will make up what we lack.
Some years ago, you introduced me to a particular method of study and assimilating Srila Prabhupada's books that wasn't simply the sort of quiet and passive reading. I wonder if you could expand a little bit on how you found you pick up the most deep understanding. Okay,
so the method really developed for us over a period of time, Damadara Prabhu. It was actually, I think you were probably TP at the manor at the time, or in that time. It was around 95. I was really struggling. With my mind, with my emotions, and with my faith. And my faith had practically gone, actually. I was become faithless, I can say. And my husband was very desperately trying to kind of like keep it together for me, because we had 3 kids. We had a lot to lose if I just lost my faith. So I in our private conversation, I was saying, a little voice told me to start studying Prabhupada's books. So I began. And as we began the process of trying to discuss Prabhupada's books, we were listening to more and more instructions from Prabhupada that we began to apply. Like, for example, he says scrutinize. Many, many places. It's on our website, Improving Our Sadhu Sangha. It's under scrutinize, I think is under, I'll just tell you which principle it is. It's principle 6. So many, many places where Prabhupada says scrutinize every word from different angles of perspective, look at it. So we began doing that. We stopped just reading a purport, but we began going through it sentence by sentence and really trying to. And another place, Prabhupada says, repeat in your own words. I think that's principle 5 on our website. Many places, Prabhupada says, in order to understand anything, learn anything, even you have to repeat, but don't repeat just like a parrot. But otherwise, we just become like a slogan religion. We just start having little cliches that we don't really understand. So Prabhupada says, repeat in your own words, explain in your own words. So we began gradually doing that. We'd go scrutinizing through the purport and repeating in our own words. And then one day I was listening to the CC on tape, prabhupadbani.org, and I was listening to that incredible section where Lord Chaitanya is talking about the Atmarama verse to God, my mind sometimes goes blank, to Sanatana Goswami. Yeah, to Sanatana Goswami. And he explained it in 64 different ways?
Yeah.
And at the end of it, he said to Sanatana Goswami, he said, I hadn't intended to say all of that. It's not that I had all of that in my mind and then I was going to teach it to you. I hadn't intended to say any of that. I don't know where it came from. And then he said, but it was by the power of your association that it just began coming out of me. It was the power of your association that made all of that come out of me. I had no intention. I hadn't thought about it. So my husband and myself began contemplating that. And that was around the time, actually, Damadara, the Stephen Covey thing was really hot in ISKCON. It was just like, and we had got his books. Mukunda Maharaj had recommended we try to read the 7 Habits. And also I had these children's books, because my children were young, called How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, and Listen So Kids Will Talk. And both those books talk about empathic listening. So we were thinking, what was it that Sanatana Goswami was doing that was bringing this out of Lord Chaitanya? Because when we would have our private discussions, the way we discussed with each other, rebuttals, interrupting, putting each other down, negation, invalidation. We would just close each other's minds down. Even if there was something we had initially wanted to say, the way we interacted was so horrible that both of us just ended up like brain dead. We just had nothing else to say to each other. So we were thinking, how can we change that? How can we discuss in a way that Lord Chaitanya and Sanatana were discussing? What was Sanatana doing that we can do for each other that would actually allow us to think rather than just shut each other off all the time? And we weren't sure. We don't know exactly what Sanatana was doing. It's not written in the CC that he did empathic listening. But we did realize that though we didn't know exactly what Sanatana was doing, we did understand a little about the power of empathic listening, that it had that effect of giving someone psychological air where they could begin to think. So we began doing that as part of our discussion, inspired by the fact that Lord Chaitanya said Sanatana Goswami was giving him psychological air. So gradually, our discussions developed like that, scrutinizing, repeating back in our own words, and giving each other psychological air by empathically listening to each other. And Prabhupada says, always cite Shastra, always. So we don't just say, I read, and then blah, 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 say the Shastra, but we bring it up so both of us can have a look at it and we help each other. Like even if I have a different perspective to my husband, we both stop our discussion and he'll help me find the Shastra that I had in mind. He's much more familiar with Shastra than I am. So he'll help me. So we can look here, I'll look it up for you. And we'll look at the evidences together, not adversarially. Prabhupada writes so many times, it's our principle 7, discussion of Krishna Katha is not a matter of debate club. Debate club is, my sole purpose is I win and you lose. But, Vada discussions, Krishna conscious discussions is a collaborative affair. It's collaborating that I may have a little bit of the truth. You may have a little bit of the truth. Both of us may have none of the truth. One of us may have none of the truth, but let's collaborate to come closer to the truth together. So those are some of the principles that underpin our current approach to Sadhu Sangha.
Very nice. And so I imagine it would take a little while. It would be quite time consuming to apply this method. You wouldn't proceed at the same rate of knots as you were reading, but you would absorb more.
Absolutely.
And you would understand more. What do you do when you come to a passage that neither of you feel like you have a strong grasp on? There are so many things that are even beyond our ability to verify. We have to almost just take on faith and suspend disbelief and so on. How do you deal with that kind of content?
So, well, even those passages where it's not about suspending disbelief, like maybe the cosmos or whatever, I don't know. The way I deal with that, anything if we've actually understood, there's two things. Have I understood it? Have I understood what's being said? And it's mind-boggling. So when it's mind-boggling, but we feel we've understood at least the meaning of the words on the page, but we find it mind-boggling, the way I normally deal with that, me and my husband, is that, if God wasn't mind-boggling, if his creation wasn't mind-boggling, he probably wouldn't be God. Because if I could accommodate all of the truths about God and his creation in my mind, that would be weird, because I'm so small and he's so great. So I'm okay with mind-boggling. Then there's the other problem, is that sometimes we just don't understand. I mean, you earlier brought up about the filters of transcribers and editors, and then there's the other filter of Prabhupada's use of English, which may not be always the same as our use of English, at least my use of English. And those can be filters that sometimes, just for me at least, obscure the meaning. What's he saying? I don't get it, So when we get to those passages, we go very slow. And we both read the books. So it's not like, I think if someone this is the first time around their books, I would go faster. Just get through, get an idea, at least of the Gita, get an overview. We did that. We got our overview a few times. And now we're going back for personal transformation. That's our task, personal assimilation, not just intellectually, but assimilation of the heart, where there's slowly transformation. So when we get to these very kind of like, I don't get it, I don't know what he's talking about, we just take it slow and we just scrutinize every word, we reflect back, repeat back. Asking questions is a very important part. After we do our best at understanding, then we try to formulate, what is it that I'm not getting, as a question. We try to put it as a question, and then we research our question. I tend to use my Facebook as an opportunity also to put up my questions, to invite lights from other devotees. But the most important thing is sometimes we don't get a light. But you know what, Damodara Prabhu? That's not important to us. What's important is that Krishna sees we're trying. In his second sentence to his Bhaktivedanta purports of the Gita, Prabhupada says we have to try to understand. He doesn't say and understand it without it. He says and try. It's that effort to understand that invites Krishna's protection and Krishna's grace in our lives. And I think, I'm still really conditioned by the modes of ignorance and passion. Obviously, I'm not going to get everything. Krishna's not going to reveal everything. But he sees that we try. And what we don't understand, we leave and try to talk about it with other devotees. Maybe they can help us. Maybe they cannot.
You mentioned that there was a period where your faith was struggling, and you found it difficult to digest some of the things that were in the books at that time. I could foresee that there might be things that in the Bhagavatam itself that so fly in the face of contemporary knowledge of the universe and so on, or at least beliefs about the universe, that they could challenge. I think Prabhupada's early disciple Purushottama was really thrown as an example, and Prabhupada would almost tease him about it. And then there are also statements that are so at odds with contemporary mores, the role of women, or other things like that. How do you hear those things that possibly challenge your natural beliefs or your foundational beliefs, and how do you reconcile? How do you become comfortable with Srila Prabhupada's version?
Thank you so much, Damodara Prabhu. I'm just going to reflect the question back. You're saying that there are statements that Prabhupada makes in the books, and maybe the books themselves, the verses make, that can challenge us beyond belief, or they may challenge our sense of our moral compass, our own inner moral compass, or they may challenge our sense of self. You gave different kinds of examples about women. It can really make women feel like, oh my God, I'm a non-being, I'm a demon just because I exist, in a woman's body. And some statements I won't repeat on air because no one's heard it. I don't want to take the statements in that direction. But, there's some statements Prabhupada seems to make that if you were in the mode of ignorance, you could interpret them in a very, very vicious way. If you're in the mode of passion, you could interpret them in a way which really justified your lustiness, and then there's other kinds of statements in Prabhupada's books which are not morally challenging, but which are just challenging about the types of the nature of the universe, the nature of God. It's just can be a little bit out there. Did I understand you correctly? You're asking how I deal with it.
Yeah, and particularly because you talked about confronting challenges of faith.
Yes, and because I went through that was very much a big part of when I lost my faith in 95, 96, yes. So I've already mentioned a little bit about the statements which are like out there, not morally challenging, but just like, wow, that's hard to believe. The way I deal with that is, Damodara Prabhu, it wouldn't, if I could encompass God, the truths about God and his creation in my little pea-brain intelligence, that would for me be, well, how can this be true? But if I can grasp it all, if it all made perfect sense and fitted into my experience of reality, that would be a little bit more worrying for me than the fact that I can't grasp all of God and his creation in the small box of my experience of reality. So that's the way I deal with it. I'm like, yeah, God is great. I'm not expected to be able to put it all, grasp it all. I accept it because God is great. Why shouldn't I accept it? He can do things, and there's realities way beyond what I would imagine. So why not? The things that the statements that have challenged my moral compass. I think this is where my early experience in ISKCON really hurt, because I am by nature a very philosophical person. I did philosophy at uni, and that's why I came to Krishna consciousness. I liked the prasadam and the kirtan. It was all fascinating, but it wouldn't have been enough for me to have made the tumultuous changes in my life to become a devotee. It was the philosophy. I'd been looking, what is the purpose of life, the meaning of life, and it just answered every question I had. It was irresistible for me, the philosophy. But as soon as I joined, when I wanted to understand it more, that's when I think, because devotees themselves didn't necessarily understand everything, and they might have felt challenged by my questions, they would just block me off. Don't ask so many questions. Don't be over intelligent. Just accept. Just do as you're told. And I wanted devotees to like me. I don't know if they did, but I wanted them to like me. And so I stopped. I really tried to kind of like put a lid on my thinking, in my questioning. But that lid erupted into faithlessness. 15 years after I joined, it just was too much for me. And especially when things started going wrong in my life. It all became too much. But then when my husband kept putting Prabhupada lectures on for me, one of the lectures I heard, which began turning things around, and I'd never heard this from anyone else except Prabhupada. Even to this day, I've tried asking my questions, and some sadhus are very kind, and some sadhus have said to me subsequently, "Who do you think you are to ask these questions?" I think, well, Prabhupada said I can. Anyway, let me tell you what Prabhupada said in this excerpt. So Prabhupada was lecturing, and I have this excerpt on the website. I have nearly all these quotes on the website. Prabhupada was lecturing on Canto 3, Chapter 25, Text 25. There's a very famous verse, Satam Prasangam Mama Vira Samvido. So it says, now you have heard, now what? It says, so now you have heard, you have to hear association of pure devotees. Now you have heard, now what? And then he said, now you should question, what is Swamiji saying? Now you should ask, what is Swamiji saying? Do I agree with him or do I disagree? And even if I disagree, discuss why I disagree. And then he said, if you discuss like this, you will see that gradually you'll understand, and you will get taste, and you will get faith. And Prabhupada was the first person who told me I'm allowed to disagree with him. It's like Shraddha is something that builds gradually through Sadhu Sanga. And there's some statements Prabhupada says that even in our discussions now, many of the big ones that other people I kind of have come to terms with and we've moved on from, but there's still some statements will come across and I think, you know what, I'll say what I think Prabhupada is saying, and then I'll say if it just affronts my moral compass. We have to say that. We can't just, it affronts our moral compass. And because you said it, Prabhupada said, don't follow blindly. In that same lecture, and also in 434, Bhagavad Gita purport, Prabhupada says, blind following is condemned. If you don't disagree, say so. Don't just blindly follow. He didn't want us to blindly follow. He says, if you disagree, say so. Why? So now we do that in our discussions. And, sometimes I feel a little offensive saying, I just disagree with Prabhupada. And then we'll discuss it, why I disagree, and then we'll try to look at it from different angles. Is that what Prabhupada meant? Blah, blah. But Prabhupada told me I'm allowed to. And this is a part of my building my faith. I'm not at the stage of a sadhaka. I do my basic sadhana every day. I chant my rounds and everything else. We have a little program at home. We do Prabhupada's ISKCON sandwich, but I don't consider myself a real sadhaka at the staunch stage of bhajana career. I'm a loose sadhaka. I'm really at the stage of sadhu sangha. I'm really at the stage where I'm trying to build my faith and build my taste so that I can firmly become one day in one life fixed in bhajana career. I do bhajan and I do a little asat sangha too. We can't just go from zero to hero overnight. And raising our doubts and discussing them in the light of Shastra, formulating our doubts into, a question that can be addressed, is a very important and essential part of gradually and authentically building our faith and our taste for bhajan. We're not just going to become heroes overnight or by faking it. We have to go through the scientific process of doing sadhu sangha correctly.
What advice would you have? Because it sounds like the style of study that you're describing needs study partners, needs people who are equally committed to the same process and the same principles and so on. Someone might be convinced that there's merits in doing it, but not have an obvious other person they can share this kind of experience with. What advice would you have for someone in that situation?
Thank you, Damadara. I really appreciate that as a question. You're saying, I appreciated all your questions, that one too. So let me reflect it back. You're saying that, okay, I'm talking about discussion, reflecting back, collaboration. That needs at least one other person to collaborate with, to discuss with. What if you don't have that other person in your life? You live alone, or you don't have any close friends, or you and your husband or your wife, you don't have that kind of relationship.
Or you just can't convince anybody to do that level of study.
Yeah, or you can't convince anyone else to participate in that kind of threadbare discussion with you. You know, you may have all these people in your life that just don't want to do this with you. So what then? I hope I've understood you correctly.
Yes, you have.
So actually, when I first began, and I think you and my husband were good friends and also colleagues at the time. He was the national secretary, and I think you might have been either in the London Temple or the Manor or both. And he was also heading up the Manchester Centre, and he was very, very busy, very, very busy, and he didn't initially have time to sit this and do this with me daily. But I had reached crisis point in my life, and I told you it was a little voice that said, if you don't start studying, you will suffer. And so I just began doing it alone, Damodara, and you can do it alone by writing. I always recommend people write, because like so I would just sit when my kids were, I had 3 small children, all under the age of 7. I'd have to wait until they were all asleep. And I would just sit with the Gita for half an hour, 20 minutes, whatever I could fit in, and write from the beginning. I did this initially without having heard these things from Prabhupada. I just, somehow or other, that's just how I did it. Intuitively, Prabhupada does say this, that you should do it systematically from the beginning. But I heard those things as I went on, and it confirmed what I was doing for me. But I just, intuitively, or guided by the super soul, I don't, that's what intuition is, isn't it? Guided by the super soul. So I just began going from the beginning of the Gita, just writing one sentence at a time, and then trying to put it in my own words. What does he mean? And underneath, I'd write it in my own words. Again, later on, I got confirmation from Prabhupada that I was doing what he wanted me to do. So put it in my own words. And then underneath that, I'd write my questions. I'd write my moral objections or my doubts or my confusions. What does it mean? Like, this doesn't make sense to me, or whatever. And if I could answer those questions myself, I'd write a little essay underneath each question. And if I couldn't, if I just got myself, into a little knot, I'd wait till my husband came home, and then I'd ask him, and we'd discuss it. But he wasn't discussing it systematically. He wasn't doing it every day with me. I was doing it myself. And I got up until around the 17th chapter of the Gita, doing it by myself like this. It's amazing how much you can cover. If you drop every day, you just do a little bit, and you do get through it. So I was doing between 20 minutes and half an hour a day. And then by the time many months had passed, maybe a couple of years had passed even, by the time I got to around the end of the 17th chapter, my husband was also feeling the benefit of just engaging with me when I'd come to him with questions. He would sit with me on those occasions when he was home from the manor or in from the from the Manchester Temple. He would sit with me and discuss the questions I had from my personal reading. He was beginning to feel benefit from those interactions. And he said, you know what? I think we should start doing this every day together. And we began together. And that's another story. But so I would always say to people, if you don't have that other person, do it alone, but write. Because when you write, it's the same as speaking. You have to formulate your thoughts. You're not just thinking, oh, yeah, I kind of get it. Yeah, I get it. And go on. You have to formulate your thoughts into a sensible sentence and write it down, capture it. So write it. And then the Lord in your heart, when he's pleased with your effort, he'll inspire someone else to join you, But, and the last thing I'd like to say is this, Damodara Prabhu, I mean, some people are in the mode of goodness and they may not feel the need for it so much. They're kind of like cruising, things are okay, I don't need to do this. In that way, the fact that I was in the mode of ignorance and passion worked for me, because I wasn't cruising. I was nosediving into a crash. If things were going drastically wrong for me. And so it was like I had to find a solution that would turn my life around. And so I felt a real sense of urgency. But if you just happen to be cruising, then just I want to paraphrase a passage from one of Prabhupada's purports. I'd have to research it to find it. But there's this incredible passage where Prabhupada says, if you're out at sea and the weather is good, the sun is shining, the sea is calm. You may think, oh, this is very nice. But within a moment, if the sea can become turbulent, the weather can become turbulent, and then everything will go wrong in your life. So he said it's like that with life. We maybe think I'm just cruising along, life's good, that's okay, but then it's very quickly everything can go wrong. We can financially something happens and we crash, our relationship can suddenly disrupt, our kids can it's just like suffering can come from all directions. So just realize we're in a dangerous situation. You may be cruising right now, but we're fundamentally at sea. And at sea, things can change very quickly. So while you have some peace, I had to wait until I was in crisis. And then I was like, oh, I'm drowning, But while you're at peace, could dedicate 20 minutes, even half an hour, if you possibly can, a day or a couple of times a week, to really trying to associate with Prabhupada. And if you don't have someone to do it with you, write systematically. And then you'll see Krishna will eventually inspire an important person in your life to do it with you.
Yes, Bhagavad Gita describes study as worshipping the Lord with one's intelligence, right?
Yes.
So we've been given these faculties to deploy, and doubt and inquiry and so on. These are all aspects of intelligence.
Yes.
Someone may argue, and we talked about this the other day, that my spiritual master just reveals the meaning of all these things. I don't need to effort away, by my own prowess to try and get these things. What do you say to someone who's taking a more passive approach, who really feels that they'll just be spoon-fed by the Lord's pure devotee, without any particular need to, really work out their intelligence like this? Very
nice question. So let me reflect it back to you, Prabhu. You're saying that some devotees think, well, I don't know, Prabhupada's books are hard. They're a little cryptic. They're hard. And my Guru Maharaj has studied them. My Guru Maharaj has understood them. And he'll just spoon feed me what I need to know as I need to know it. And I don't have to do all the hard work. He's done the hard work. I just listen to his classes and he tells me exactly what I need to know. Did I understand you correctly?
Yeah, that's an attitude that's out there, I'm sure.
Yes. Okay. So I have 2 points I'd like to say that. But by the way, Damodara, I don't know how comfortable you would feel if I asked you if you had a light on your own question, which is what I generally do. How would you answer that question? Or would you prefer we don't go down there in this particular interview? How would you like to play that?
I'm happy. We discussed this a little bit yesterday.
Yeah. So how would you answer yours out? What light do you have?
Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna. Shrinvatam is described as eagerness to hear. And that there's so much, is that purely enthusiasm for listening, or a general openness and deep sense of personal inquiry? So my sense is, as you said, with Sanatana Goswami's listening to Lord Chaitanya, he brought a certain compelling, spirit of learning to that conversation.
Yeah.
And that actually enthused Lord Chaitanya to share even more.
Wow.
And Srila Prabhupada mentions this somewhere. I couldn't give you the reference, but he talks about, a potent speaker and a fertile listener. And this is the way that the knowledge is impregnated.
Yes.
So I think the listener can't simply be passive. You described earlier, blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned.
Yes.
In this verse. Pariprashna is actually a critical part of the understanding process.
Yes.
If we're not forming inquiry could be active. I put a question to the spiritual master, or it could simply be the spirit in which we're really listening. We're working hard. My sense is Srila Prabhupada was actually quite disappointed if there weren't questions at the end of class, or they were questions on some other topic than which he'd spoken.
Absolutely.
Because he wanted to think that his disciples were really working at understanding. Yes. And it shouldn't be that everything just goes in without question, that we actually should be working hard to ensure we're picking up the right understanding. So those are my clumsy thoughts, but I'd love to hear yours.
I will share mine, but your thoughts weren't clumsy. They were very valuable. So I'd just like to capture them if you don't mind. And I'm demonstrating what we do in our discussions anyway. What we do in our discussions is now kind of like part of how I discuss. So if you would tolerate me reflecting back your points.
For sure.
So you brought up the verse, Shrimatam Swakata Krishna, Punya Shavana Kirtana. You're saying that, this hearing and discussing about Krishna is not just something we do as a matter of fashion. You didn't use those words, but it should be coming from a deep sense of personal inquiry. You also reflected back on the incident between Lord Chaitanya and Sanatana Goswami. It was Sanatana Goswami's earnestness to understand, to know, to learn, to hear that inspires Lord Chaitanya. And you referred to Prabhupada saying there has to be a potent speaker and a fertile hearer. So what is fertile hearer? Fertile hearer is not just someone who sits there and says, yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir. He's someone who's actually working hard at trying to understand the truths about God, has an earnestness to understand the truths about God and his relationship with the Lord. So you're saying without that, just sitting there, ticking the sat in the box, yeah, I listened to my one lecture, but there's not a burning desire in you to understand, who am I? Why am I here? Who is God? What is my relationship with him? What does the Lord tell me about himself? If you don't have that, which means you're going to be lazy to study Prabhupada's books, then that's going to be a problem in your life. You need to get to the stage where you realize that this inquiry is a very essential part of our personal growth. That without this earnestness to understand these truths, without being willing to work at understanding these truths, we're going to be stunted spiritually. You didn't use all those words, but that's what I understood you to mean. I don't know if I understood you correctly.
Yeah.
I loved your lights. I don't know if you'd like to add anything to your lights now that I've reflected back. It might have given you some psychological air, and you'd like to develop it.
I'd love to hear your response as well. Okay. If there's other things on top.
First of all, I really appreciated your light, and I'd like to add a couple of things. Even if we're going to understand, let's say our Guru Maharaj is a Paramahansa, has all those qualities that I read about in the very beginning. Prabhupada says we have to associate with a person who is self-realized. He said, learned in the Vedanta, self-realized at the Brahmavita platform at minimum, and an unalloyed devotee. So let's say your Guru Maharaj fits the bill. To even hear him, you have to hear actively. You have to be able to repeat back. Your Guru Maharaj says, he's saying one thing. Actually, another verse has come to my mind I'd like to bring in here. Sorry, my thoughts, try to bring them in. In the 3rd canto, Damodara Prabhu, Canto 3, Chapter 29, texts 8 to 10. Shukadev Goswami, in fact, Kapila Dev, talks about hearing, chanting, remembering, doing all the 9 angas of bhakti in 3 different modes of nature, and also in Shuddha Sattva. So your Guru Maharaj may be speaking in Shuddha Sattva, but if I'm in the mode of ignorance, I'm going to filter his words through my mode of ignorance. And what I've come up with, my so what, is going to be very different from potentially what my Guru Maharaj was in Shuddha Sattva intended. So even then we have to work on improving how we hear, how we do Sadhu Sangha, because the way this improving the culture of Sadhu Sangha helps us to gradually filter out our filters. We have filters of the mode of ignorance and the mode of passion, and even the mode of goodness, but the mode of goodness is supportive, is helpful. But it's mode of ignorance and passion, we're completely getting the wrong end of the stick. We're not, Krishna consciousness is about making us gentle, kind, compassionate, and if we're ending up hateful and domineering, we're getting the wrong end of the stick. We're filtering the teachings through our modes of ignorance and passion. So even if your Guru Maharaj is speaking in Shuddha Sattva, we still need to improve how we hear. That's one point. The other point is, what guarantee do you have that your Guru Maharaj is in Shuddha Sattva? What guarantee? Because, you don't, unfortunately, and I hate to say this on air, but unfortunately, our history since Prabhupada has left has shown that not everyone who does that service of giving diksha, not everyone who took that position of a sannyasi or even a GBC was in Shuddha Sattva. Some of them were still struggling with the nartas and the modes of ignorance and passion, because we're sadhakas. Of course, your particular Guru Maharaj may no longer be a sadhaka. He may be a Shuddha Sattva. But if you're not a Shuddha Sattva devotee, how can you be sure of that? Therefore, that's why Prabhupada left us his books, so we can all, everyone from the gurus down to the disciples, bring ourselves up and up in our modes through his association. Because he, unlike us, is not a devotee who's coming up. He's a devotee who's descended from Goloka to bring us up. We have to take his association.
Thank you. We're at about 50-minute mark, and I'm not sure if we want to end around an hour or go a little longer.
Whatever you're happy with, Damadara Prabhu. I'm not experienced at this Istagosthi, so whatever you're happy with.
Well, this is the first time, this one as well. One topic that we talked about a little yesterday, and it's related to what you were talking about. Sadhu Sanga is one of the stages that Srila Rupa Goswami describes. Adoshradha tata sadhu sangatama janakriya. And this way, the progressive steps. Yes. We were even discussing how steps could be viewed as, when walking, that you take your second step, you then lift your foot from the first step to move to the third step.
Yes.
And that first step is now relinquished and left behind. Yes. It played a part, but now it's done. It's fulfilled its role. And we also looked at steps possibly being like a staircase, where steps are built on top of each other.
Yes.
Inherent, I think, in what you've been describing is that we quickly seem to want to bypass Sadhu Sanga on our way to the higher reaches of bhajana kriya, anartha nivritti, nishta, and so on. And your worry, if I understood from what you were saying, is that we haven't actually learned how to even master that stage or excel in that stage before we're potentially, in our minds, relinquishing it. We're picking out a guru. That's the guru now. I can kind of more or less ignore the other sadhus because I got a guru. So I'd love to hear your thoughts just on that in general.
Really nice point again, Prabhu. So you're saying, do you mind if I reflect back again?
Please.
So you're saying that, this term Sadhu Sanga comes up in the 9 steps of bhakti from Adoshradha. There's some little faith. And then we do Sadhu Sanga, then we get into bhajana kriya. Initiation happens some way in the middle of bhajana kriya. And then comes Nishta, Ruchi, Shakti, Bhava, and Prema. So we're thinking, okay, I did the Sadhu Sanga. I came and joined. I spent 6 months in the temple. Sadhu Sanga done. Now I relinquish that and I move to taking a guru, which happens at the stage of bhajana kriya. And Sadhu Sanga is no longer relevant. Now I've got guru and I'm moving forward. I'm going to be a Prema very soon. So, well, you didn't say that, was my facetiousness. So you say we could look at Sadhu Sanga like that. It's something that we do, like we're walking forward and then we relinquish. That's in the past and we're on the next step. We're moving forward. Or we could take step as being like steps on a staircase or rungs of a ladder, where each step is creating the foundation for the next step. It can never be truly relinquished, because if you take it out, the others collapse. So it has to be there. It has to stay there. Did I understand you correctly? You're saying,
did.
What? And do you have a light, Damadara? Would you, on your own question?
Yeah, I guess I came up with the metaphor of the staircase because I fundamentally believe Shraddha is foundational. I learned from Bhakti True Swami that Shraddha can also be used even to talk about respect or appreciation. So it's a broader thing. Our English approximation of the word faith may be insufficient to fully understand this thing, Shraddha. So it did strike me that having a favorable attitude is foundational. If that somehow at some point is lost, then the whole foundation is rocky. And I would say the same thing then with Sadhu Sanga. I would say sadhus actually awaken our initial faith. Generally, Krishna reaches out to the conditioned souls through the medium of sadhus, his ambassadors doing his work in the world. And we almost get infected with a strain of Shraddha that rubs off from those sadhus. Our faith is strengthened by sadhus, and generally, the guru is someone who emerges from the group of sadhus. In fact, we're often taught that it's not guru singular. Vande guru, what's that? Vande ham Sri Guru, Sri Gurun, Sri Yuta Pada Kamalam, Sri Gurun Vaishnavangscha. So yes, gurus are multiple as opposed to singular. And the great souls have always taught us that way. So yes, for me, these things are cumulative. And every one of those foundations is vital. If, we mess up with sadhus, that's why the first offense against the holy name is so corrosive to the devotional creeper, then everything else gets rocky. So that would be my sense, is that initial Shraddha is what matures into prema. Even Anartha-nivritti seems to be an effect of bhajana kriya, as opposed to a discrete process of some sort, a discrete activity. We cleanse our heart by, chanting, or Krishna cleanses the heart when we chant sincerely. Anyway, so again, a few muddled thoughts, but my view is that Sadhu Sangha is never indispensable. It's never never dispensable. It's never something that fulfills its use and now can be cast aside.
Some very precious thoughts as you were thinking, and I'm going to reflect it back, Damadara Prabhu, because I hope that by doing this, we'll see that sometimes initially we do have muddled thoughts, but in that muddle, there's preciousness too. And that's one of the benefits of reflecting back to each other. We help each other to sift our thoughts through. So let me try to reflect back some of the things you shared. So you were saying the reason why you used the example of the staircase gives it away that you do believe that it's accumulative, that the initial stages are foundational, that they stay there, and if they were taken out, the rest of it would collapse. And you gave the example of even Anartha-nivritti. You take out the preceding stage, bhajana kriya, there's not going to be any Anartha-nivritti. Anartha-nivritti depends on bhajana kriya staying there. So likewise, bhajana kriya depends on sadhu sangha staying there. It has to carry on. And then you also added, you said quite a few very interesting things, but what comes to my mind is you explained how Bhakti Churu Maharaj once told you that Shraddha can also mean respect. So when you said that, what it said in my brain was that the initial Ado Shraddha is just some respect. It's not the same as firm faith in the process and the teachings. It's just like we've met devotees. You talked about how devotees give us that initial respect. They're like the Lord's ambassadors. We meet them, we hear something, we're given some prasadam, we're given a book. And then I like these devotees, that kind of respect awakens in the heart. But that respect has to, through sadhu sangha, and you say the sadhus are our gurus. From them may emerge the Diksha Guru, but they're all teaching us something. So from them, by that association of correct sadhu sangha, will gradually awaken firm faith, nishta. That's the real faith. But the initial faith is more like, I like these guys. I don't know if I interpreted what you meant by citing Bhakti True Maharaj correctly, but that's what it said in my head.
Absolutely. No, you absolutely got it.
Okay, thank you. I really like that. Would you like to add any more on your light?
No, please. I'd love to hear from you.
Well, I'd like to build on what you said, actually, Damadara Prabhu, which I do, like you, accept that it's foundational. And there's many, many places where Prabhupada says that. I'll just quickly go to that. I think it's in 2:30, Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, Text 30. If we were having a discussion which wasn't virtual and I feel that pressure of not being able to stop and research, I would actually just stop and bring the verses up and the purports up. But for anyone who's listening, so that you can check up yourself, Canto 2, Chapter 2, Text 30, there is a paragraph around halfway through that purport that begins with, when we speak of hearing and chanting. So that's how the paragraph starts, when we speak of hearing and chanting. So in that paragraph, Prabhupada says that when we speak of hearing and chanting, we don't just mean hearing and chanting the 16 names, the mantra, the Hare Krishna mantra composed of 16, 32 syllables or whatever, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. He says that's not all that's meant by hearing and chanting. We also mean hearing and discussing books like Gita and Bhagavatam. And then he says these primary functions of hearing and chanting are primary to devotional service. So primary, as that means foundational. And by continuing to do them, a bhakti lata beach gradually grows and penetrates through the layers of the universe, enters into the spiritual sky, and goes to Vaikuntha and finally finds shelter at the lotus feet of Radha Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan, where it flowers. So the watering process, this is Sadhu Sanga, this hearing and discussing books like Gita and Bhagavatam. And it's as foundational as hearing and chanting our japa, our kirtan. Prabhupada says this is the full conception of Shravanam Kirtanam. It means to chant the holy name as japa and kirtan, but it also means to discuss books like Gita and Bhagavatam, which is basically Sadhu Sanga. So it is foundational, and it's a primary. It's the watering process that keeps our Shraddha developing to the point of prema. You take it out, the watering process has stopped. So I just wanted to cite that as one point. I had another point I can add, but should I just carry on? Or?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 3, I think it's text 3. I'd have to, it's not one that I refer to a lot, but I think it's text 3. Prabhupada talks about faith. He says the process of building faith is our whole business. I'm paraphrasing him. I'm not putting his words. He says, this is our whole business, developing faith. He says, we start with faith. No faith, not good faith, weak faith. That's how it starts. So we start with Ajay Shraddha, but it may not be real faith, because one thing, we may be respecting something, which is like we may be respecting someone because they can give us liberation. That is not the Bhakti Lata Beach. Desiring liberation is not the Bhakti Lata Beach. So we don't really have faith. It is respect for the person, but we don't have faith in love of God. So he says you may not have Adoshada in the beginning. There's no faith. There's not good faith. You may not be understanding things properly, or may not be very strong, or weak faith may not be very strong. Now, the whole process of Sadhu Sangha is to take that very weak or mistaken, or we're mistaking jnana or karma with bhakti, and turning that into the real seed of bhakti at the stage of nishta. Nishta, now you have the real seed of bhakti, the real faith in the right thing, the faith that it doesn't matter if I take birth again, whatever Krishna wants, whatever which is conducive to my loving him. I just don't want to be a conditioned soul, a thief in this world anymore. I don't want to be stealing from Krishna anymore, but let me go anywhere that which helps me to develop my love for Krishna. That's the goal, and the process. It's not just working hard. It's not just pretending I'm a celibate when I'm not. It's not just, getting big results or earning big money. The process is hearing and chanting about Krishna. This is the Yuga Dham. So real faith comes when we have a real desire for the Sajja, I want to love Krishna no matter what. And the sadhan, Shravanam Kirtana. Then we have the real faith. And it may not, I mean, I feel I have that, but I'm not at the stage of Nishta. So maybe that real faith comes early. But in order for it to come early, it has to be supported by good Sadhu Sangha. Otherwise, many times, and you will probably be much more familiar with the CC than I am, but the CC talks about how we can mistaken the weeds to be bhakti lata beaches. The weed of, karma, of having a position. I have a high position in this movement. I must be a very advanced devotee. I have a lot of wealth and followers. I must be a very advanced devotee. And that's the proof of my advancement. I just want liberation. I'm not able to do complete fast, and I don't look at women anymore. I just want liberation. No, Dasa, if they're supporting bhakti, which is this, the real bhakti is cultivating this taste. That is that verse in the Bhagavatam, Dharma, Sanushtita Pumsa, Vishvakshena Katasuyat, Not Pade Yadiratim, Shrama Evahi Kevalam. That without getting that taste for Hari Kata, and that taste means it displaces every other taste. I frankly don't have that taste. I take Hari Kata as my medicine. I realize without it, I will spiral down into the whirlpool of material existence. I take it as my medicine. But when you have that taste, then now you know who's a real devotee. Has no inclination to asat sangha. I'm not there. But I know if I keep putting in the milk of sadhu sangha correctly, as much as I'm able to tolerate it, every day, just a few more drops, then one lifetime or other, that will displace my attraction for asat sangha. And asat sangha comes in many forms. Watching the football, my particular addiction is watching films or documentaries or whatever on YouTube. I don't have a TV, but YouTube now exists, unfortunately. If it wasn't YouTube, I'd be reading novels, but I just like that entertainment value for my mind. Other people may be socializing, gossiping, so many ways that asat sangha can pertain. And satsanga means associating with that liberated soul Prabhupada. Do I have a taste for that? And if we don't, we have to cultivate it. We must cultivate it small, come in like a pin, out like a plow. I can't hear Prabhupada all day long. I just can't do it. My mind would explode. I want some asat sangha. But I can put it in a little bit, few drops, until gradually build my taste, gradually do that. And this is the process. This is the science of Krishna consciousness. Build your taste for the sat. Cultivate it by doing it right, putting it in. And gradually it'll displace our taste for the asat. And then we'll know, now I'm a devotee. Not when I'm faking it, but when I genuinely have no more attraction to the asat. And until then, we have to be honest, but working on it. We have this sometimes phenomenon in the past. I don't know if it's still there. The devotees, trying to be staunch, and devotees saying, I have to be honest, Prabhu. It's either one or the other. I'm either trying hard at my Krishna consciousness, or I now want to be honest, and I just go to the nightclubs, I go to the, I just do whatever I want to do because I'm trying to be an honest person. But honest means admitting I'm not there, but it doesn't mean giving up trying. Put in a little bit of your satsanga every day, if you can manage it every day. If you can't, then every week. But get it in there. Get it in. Like it's the medicine. Put the medicine in somewhere in your week, and don't pretend you're a big. Don't be telling everyone, "Oh, I'm a staunch devotee," when you know you're not. Let's be honest. Let's be who we are. But that doesn't mean we should stop trying and give up the satsanga. Sorry, I don't know if I went off topic there, but
it's good. And look, you may describe yourself in humble terms as not yet having natural taste. Maybe that is your subjective sense of it, but certainly I'm experiencing your enthusing energy. So
thank you, Damadara.
You're one of those infectious sadhus that
I have faith in sadhu sangha, doing it correctly. Unfortunately, I'm not at the stage of taste yet. I'll know when I am, but I'm not there.
So it's about 8:30, 8:40 now.
Yeah, it's getting
evening.
late for you.
It's a little bit late for me. I
Well,
wanted to thank you so much for being so. Chintamani ji has just dropped a likewise. So he was resonating with what I just said there in terms of your enthusiastic energy. I hope we can have you back on at some stage.
Thank you so much, Damadara Prabhu, for allowing me to share this passion with you and the devotees who watch your channel.
I agree with you that considering the amount of energy that Srila Prabhupada put into making these books available, it's embarrassing that we're not taking as much advantage as we should. So I always feel very enthused when there's devotees. I mean, just your quoting different passages. I was looking them up, by the way, as you were talking.
Good.
And you got them almost and so that's expect. In Srila Prabhupada, there are times he would express irritation if you quoted something and the devotees weren't immediately following what he was saying or where it's going. He knew just from that, you're not studying.
You're not reading.
You're not reading. And, if someone labored to fashion us a gift and then it sits on a shelf, that's just heart-wrenching, really. And
Yes.
so Srila Prabhupada, the only repayment he's really looking for is that we take advantage of that he, labored to give us pains.
Yes, absolutely, Damadara. I've lost you. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah.
Damadara, I agreed with everything you said, and I just thought, because I know that we're going to finish off now, just the thought crossed my mind, if you'd be kind enough to share the URL for the improvingsanga.com website.
Absolutely. I don't know how I exactly share it on the screen, but let's just go. It's
www.improvingsanga, one word, improvingsanga.com.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
I'll put it in the in the chat below the message. So this is going out on my page, personal page. It's going out on Nurturing Shraddha, and it's going out on Virtual Istagosthi, and certainly we'll have it available. We'll probably upload it to YouTube at some stage as well. So hopefully it's there for posterity. We only had a handful of people listening live. But my experience is Australia's timing doesn't always line up too favorably with other parts of the world. So hopefully we'll get some more people joining. Thank you so much for being so generous and enthusing us with your devotion to Srila Prabhupada's books.
Thank you, Damadara Prabhu. Very kind of you to have me on. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
I'll end the live broadcast, but let's just stay and debrief for a moment or two.
Sure.